Welcome to another episode of Price Targets with your host Bitcoin Jack. Welcome back, guys. It's Tuesday, and I have amazing news because Backpack did launch their Backpack EU beta, and essentially what it means is that most countries in the EU will have access to perps at 10x, and there's various rules for different countries in the EU concerning it being fiat only or actually being able to deposit crypto. So you'll have to sign up and figure out which rules apply to you. Unfortunately, I don't have a page to kind of give you the exact details for each country. If you want to have the full package that Backpack Global, so that's a different kind of exchange compared to Backpack EU, if you want to have access to all the features that Backpack EU has, there might be ways to make that happen, even if you're in the EU. But if that's the case, send me a DM and I'll see what I can make happen. But if you were waiting for Backpack EU, yeah, join the waitlist. There's 100 people that can join daily, and eventually it's just going to open up for everyone. And again, if you want to have access to all the features, the lending, etc., the full exchange, basically, don't hesitate to send me a DM on Twitter. There is a couple of things possible to introduce you, and we'll figure out if those apply to you. So I think that's it on the Backpack front. I'm gonna jump into Bitcoin, and I want to talk about a few of the coins that are potentially in this crazy spot. Obviously, Fartcoin, it looks very much like Bitcoin in a way. Obviously, it's it's in my opinion still a corrective pattern where we have this kind of pattern. Let me get a different color here. And then if you look at, for example, Fartcoin, we can pretty much see the same. It's a pullback, rate the highs, rate the lows kind of setup. Last week we spoke about Fartcoin trading at 69 cents being kind of like a very memeable entry. That was a dream for a long time. And essentially saying that it needs to hold the level here and reclaim the level here. And if it does that, it has quite some upside. Maybe it doesn't, go there, but it's the entry that counts. After that, it's just management of the entry. And the entry was pretty clear. The price bounced. From this moment on, if you're going to lose money, well, that's quite a challenge. Let's put it that way. Unless you just hold it into a loss, right? And the same goes for Link. We spoke about it. Essentially that we wanted to buy the whole 22 range. In last week's video, we kind of, talked about the potential of this being a Livermore cylinder. It doesn't look necessarily like a Livermore cylinder. It does have this break of the trend line, which is nice. I think a lot of alts are kind of looking like, this kind of falling wedge structure. And it's always nice when that happens at a key level that we outlined like weeks ago, between like 22, 23. That is a good setup. If we want to be creative on the Livermore, but that's just stretching it, but I'm just going to draw it because it's kind of funny to do anyway. We could draw it some way, something like this, where we kind of stretch the trend line over here. Looks good. Not the greatest bounce, but there is room for this to accelerate actually. Let's see if we can get to that 38 target, right? 20 6.88 could come, like if the if the entire market turns sour here, sure. But I kind of like the entry at this current level because price was a bit lethargic. Didn't really manage to kind of go lower. We outlined the level weeks ago, and then it is bouncing. So holding on, and just going to see what the market's going to give us. I'll come back to Bitcoin in a bit. We have our ETH BTC. I spoke about generally being bearish. That might change here. I think I shared the bearish entry here on August 25th. So ideally, I get my sweep of the liquidity of this low of the 20th of August into this block here. So I'm gonna wait for that now. Let's see. Yeah, let's jump into gold. Goldie. It's a fucking amazing entry. And it's a fucking amazing run. Absolutely hilarious. It's we got our entry here. We had our invalidation at 3244. It is an absolute stunner. I'm gonna start taking profit on this. And it is getting to the point where people are telling me it's gonna go way, way higher. My target is in the 3,700 range, but this is moving so quickly. And if it's a leading signal for example, Bitcoin and a bunch of other crypto assets, it's the upside here versus getting some more, taking some more risk in crypto is really starting to shift into crypto's favor. And especially, I can wait here for a few more percentages, but the mode of the move has happened now. And there are some absolutely stunning setups in crypto that we're exposed to right now. This was our last week's video. Should I? Yeah, I mean, on a non-logarithmic scale, on a linear scale, this is kind of the same falling wedge, but I would even draw it something like, on a lower time frame. And this is a chart that I shared on Twitter. You can basically draw this one. And so it's like a falling wedge inside a falling wedge, essentially. The 108 level was the sweep of the low here from July 25. And for me, this is a very high conviction play. Right. I don't know whether we're going to see this continuation into like target 1, target 2 that we spoke about last week, but the entry for me was a very high conviction. So I put a lot of effort and size behind this. I think this is going to be a beautiful runner. And even then, I don't always mind round tripping shit. For me, it's about getting the entry and then being able to put a lot of risk into that entry. So there's going to be trades that have humongous returns and become basically risk-free at some point, which is the case with this one right now. For Link, obviously, it's a little trickier, but this one is just a fat runner. Let's go into... We'll end with Bitcoin, right? So my biggest fear in my last video a week ago was the Japanese 10-year yield. And essentially what I outlined is that Japan needs the US to cut, and the longer it takes for the US to lower interest rates, the more pressure is gonna be, the more pressure is gonna build for the Japanese government bonds. And with that, there is a plethora of value implosion, which is indirectly tied again to US government bonds, because they hold a ton, which they might have to sell, right? And then on top of that, you have the carry trade where you borrow on one side, you buy the other shit, and then you have like a kind of a profit between in the delta of the yield. My base case last week was that we need to see more evidence in the US to, that we're going to see more cuts. And if that would be the case, this wouldn't break out from the 1.5 range towards the 2% range and instead fall back down into the range and trade lower. We had a couple of reports last week that kind of confirmed the need for, loosening financial conditions in the US. Labor is not doing too great. And we're on the verge, basically, of seeing maybe even 3 rate cuts. And there's even a very mild chance on a 0.5% rate cut in September in a week's time. So that's the reason why this is coming. And I think it does kind of help the market relax a little bit. Hopefully, we're not going to get a 0.5 basis cut, rate cut, sorry, because I think that's going to scare the market. But the fact that there's definitely going to be members of the FOMC, like the Federal Reserve Committee, that are in favor of a 0.5. I think if we get to 0.25 and then have the confirmation that there's people who want more, I think generally without any further deterioration, without any signal that the labor market is in actual intense problems, that's bullish, soft landing, softening, financial loosening, that would be very, very bullish for the market. If for some reason labor starts to explode, and problems arise and they're much bigger than previously expected, and it does force the Fed to kind of come up with way more cuts than the market is currently pricing, I'm not really sure if that's really going to be a bullish thing short term. It might become a lot more complex, but just a soft 25 and then another 25 and another 25 basis points would be with a stabilizing labor market, or slightly worsening but not anything crazy, and then kind of motor out with good expectations. That's gonna create a massive bull market. So does gold anticipate one or the other? It's definitely anticipating that fiat will devaluate. So reason to obviously buy the dip on Bitcoin if it comes, because it's doing the same thing. So Doge doing heaven's work. No position there. So Bitcoin, this is becoming awkward for bears in my opinion. It's we've been vocal for quite some time, and every retest of the previous range has been rejected. Like there's been a few, right? But no real progress has been made of these retests. At this point, this resistance has been tested quite a few times. If you zoom out, it's still just a retest of the previous consolidation. We've never really accepted back into it and seen trend progression inside the previous range. And you can't forever test that. So if in the next few days, this doesn't break down into something, extremely shitty, I think it's looking quite good. If for some reason this happens and we get smashed back down here, different story. But for now, it's starting to look like a decent bullish buildup, which is just gonna propel us into continuation. It's starting to look like something you've seen like here, where you just keep projecting, seeing some lower lows every time, and then make the next leg. Obviously, this is much smaller, so, let's just for now say that the target is the top of the range. And I mean, the worst case scenario that would really, no, there's obviously way worse scenarios, but something that would be really annoying would be essentially consolidation followed by consolidation. And then it does that again, right? So it would just be a very retarded market where we essentially repeat the pattern. This could happen if the whole rate cut cycle is kind of pretty shitty and turns out to be shittier than expected. Obviously, Bitcoin is going to capture aggressive rate cuts eventually, but there's always going to be this hiccup when there is a bit of panic. Even gold has this, gold's anticipating expansion of the fiat system. But there's always going to be some, shared liquidity with other markets that are going to get hit harder, which need to like recalibrate their risks, and short-term unavailability of liquidity because people are scared, always going to ruin price appreciation. So I would not be surprised to see a scenario where there is actually, going to be a breakout that's going to be quite weak again, if it turns out that the next few months are actually a cut cycle that is not going to be as positive as we thought. So not kind of like the soft landing into a nice economy, but it turns out the economy is truly shit and we really need to cut more aggressively. Obviously, it's going to lead to more inflation, et cetera, et cetera. And that upside will for sure be captured by Bitcoin. It's always just a question, what happens first, right? And gold is anticipating this, and Bitcoin has been going in the other direction. So to me, maybe Bitcoin has been front running this, and because of that, we're just going to have like a muted reaction and then another consolidation before everything turns very, very bullish. Just capital rotations into capital rotations. And then ETH, I mean, I'm bullish on Bitcoin, and I'm thinking ETH is going to have to take the backseat for a little bit. If we kind of do see this scenario, then I think ETH is going to have to retrace against Bitcoin for quite a bit. And we've been seeing that Solana has been quite bullish. Last week we spoke about it. And I mean, I still think there's a good chance that this is actually doing the ETH BTC fractal, which means it's going to go up here a bit higher than everyone's expecting, and then have it turning around. So bullish on Solana. That is, I think Solana is going to be able to reach that 300 plus target before Solana BTC is going to, take the backseat again. And on ETH versus Solana, we're in a retrace period as well. I don't think it's going to go much lower than this. Then this. So let's add alert to that. That's in my opinion, that is where I'd be reloading ETH versus Sol versus the other way around. There really isn't anything else that's interesting to me right now. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I think Bitcoin looks way more bullish than people give it credit for. Last week's bias was it is definitely worth it to be long, and we got some pretty crazy nice entries on Link and SPX 6900. I think Bitcoin is gonna, yeah. I mean, honestly, this squiggly would not surprise me. I would prefer not to have another boring consolidation after another rip, but we'll see how the whole shenanigans with the rate cut cycle is gonna work out. One last thing. Where are you? Here you are. So, ES, people keep saying it's gonna dip. People keep saying it's a rising wedge. People keep saying it's overextended. People keep saying CTAs are max long, blah, 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 blah. This shit is just vertical accumulation, in my opinion. Every dip is being bought. Every push goes higher. The real dip was here. And this is just going to have, a significant expansion. I always like to measure this kind of stuff this way, like the 0.5 being like the breakout being the level that's significant. We're going to see a giant candle, at least, a candle quite straight to 6,700 in my opinion. So maybe a little dippy, but I think the next few candles here, the next weekly basically is going to be a 6-7% candle. That's going to be quite impressive to see. And if Bitcoin cannot fucking bounce when that happens, then I don't know what's going to make it bounce, especially considering gold is also soaring. So, I mean, really not that shitty looking market. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope you guys going to check out Backpack EU if you want to join the global exchange, which has a lot more features and a lot more products. Reach out to me. Maybe I can make something happen. And I hope you guys come watch next week too. So take care. Cheers. Ciao.